This is a show about finding solutions to real issues this country is facing today. We have no political agenda. We are not about fault or blame. Instead, we want to create a safe place we can come to the middle and talk about ways we can all work together to create positive change.
You're at The In-Between with Donna Martini.
Good morning and welcome to The In-Between. This is Donna Martini on a beautiful day here on the campus of CW Post, Long Island University. And I have two really special co-hosts with me today. They're a married couple. Their names are Barry and Joyce Vissell. And they wrote two amazing books, How to Really Love a Woman and How to Really Love a Man. And I'm excited today because I read some of their books this morning and yesterday, and I actually learned something from them immediately. I also was caught by one of the chapters, which is called The Myth of Penis Size. I think that was the first thing I saw in the book when I opened it. I'm like, what kind of book is this? But then I realized it's all about true love and about how do we treat one another. So welcome to the show, Barry and Joyce.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, Donna.
So let's go delve right in. I want our listeners to know about you, about how you got together, about what you do as coaches and everything else. Just explain it all.
All right. Well, we met when we were 18 in upstate New York and at college, and we've been together ever since. We're 72, so we've been together a long, long time, married almost 50 years. And we were married when Barry went through medical school, and I'm a nurse. And so we have all this medical training, and when he was completed with his medical training, he actually got the vision first to really work with couples and to help people have the best relationship that is possible. And so that's what we've really dedicated our lives to that. We do workshops and individual counseling, and we write the books, and it's our passion. And we love to see relationships go deeper and turn around and be all that they can be.
And I would just add that the greatest workshop is our ongoing workshop of being together for 53 years, because every day we learn something new about each other, about ourselves.
And raising 3 children together has, been wonderful and a challenge, and it has brought us so much closer too.
That's really awesome. I love what you said, how to have the best relationship. I have a saying myself. It's my mantra for my clients and for myself too every day. Being born was our gift, living life is our challenge, and being the best we can be is our choice. So the idea that you come together with someone, you're not just existing and coexisting, you want to have the best relationship you can. That's meaningful, and it's a willingness to do that. We can't just skate through, and we see the results of skating through and not really trying to. We have a huge divorce rate. So talk to me about your practice and how, let's just say I'm married, I come to you, what do you do next?
Well, I want to just go with a little bit with what you just said about being the best that you can be. So we decided early on that our relationship would be the top priority in our lives, and that nothing else would be more important. Of course, we had 3 children, and so the time quality, they took a lot more time. But always, our relationship and our love was the top priority over our work and over everything. And that has blessed us so much. It's blessed our children, it's blessed our work, it's greatly blessed our health to just really focus on love and really every day deepening our love and relationship.
Okay, and Donna, I'd like to answer your question, because probably when a couple comes to us, the first thing we look at is the inner child part, which most couples ignore. Most couples, they relate to each other as man and woman, or man and man, or woman and woman, whatever it is, but adult to adult. And in reality, there's a child, and the child's been hurt, and the child has wounds. And so we need to bring those out in the session right away. And when that comes out, with vulnerability, when those wounds can be seen by the other person and then held by the other person, then real healing can happen. So that's one aspect of our work.
So I love the inner child work for myself, and I've done it, and actually had coaches years ago who taught me how to do that, and then I brought it into my practice. But what's really cool about that is, like, the name of the show is The In-Between, and we come to the middle where we can all resolve issues rather than staying divided. In relationships, we should be doing that all the time, but we get defensive, we self-protect, and we become a little more inner-directed. So if you look at your spouse as the soul they came here with and as the soul child, and you realize that they're maybe in pain from something that went on years ago and they're just carrying it with them, when you can bring them to that level, you actually, like you do your own child, you love them unconditionally, and it's not as hard to stay divided. You really more want to come in and help, right, than you do, say, angry or anxiety-ridden or frustrated or whatever it is. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yes.
And really, vulnerability is the key. To be undefensive, to reveal your sadness, your pain, your fear. That opens your partner's heart. It always will.
So, I'm sorry, the inner child work, when we tell people to do that, how would that play out? Because I know how I do it, but I'd love to hear your version.
Well, something that's really important with the inner child work is that it's balanced, that each partner has that opportunity to really be held in their inner child. And sometimes by necessity, one person needs a lot more. One of our experiences, my third pregnancy, the baby died before it was born, and I just went into very, very deep grief, and I needed Barry to be really, really strong. We had 2 other children, and and he took care of me physically and emotionally, and he was just really there as a father, because I went into this very little girl grieving space, and that was beautiful for a couple of months, and then it wasn't, because the pendulum had swung so far that one day Barry came into the room where I was and said, I lost a baby too, and he started to cry, and I held him and comforted him, and the pendulum went back into a good place, and where we were really, really comforting each other and really holding that space for each other. And so that's something that we also look for in our counseling is, has the pendulum gone way the other way, and what can we do to bring it back, to acknowledge the person whose inner child is never seen, and to bring it back into a really good balance.
So Barry, let me ask you a question on that. Like, did you feel badly that you had some kind of sensitivity in your own self that was developing because you wanted to be there for her, and to flip it on yourself? That must have been really hard. A, because you're a man, right? And to admit that your feelings, was that a powerful moment for you? Obviously, it was powerful if you cried, but was it hard to do?
Okay, so Donna, I grew up in Brooklyn. Okay, and when I grew up in Brooklyn as a child, it was a tough neighborhood. I was beaten a lot. I learned how to hide my inner child, like most people do, and especially men in this culture learn it a little bit more than women. So it was more natural for me at this time when we lost the baby. It was more natural for me to step into that powerful fathering doctor. And Joyce, she just went right into that grieving little girl pain, of loss and grief. And so that's, to this day, it's still a little harder for me to reveal my own little child. And anytime I do that, anytime I come up to Joyce and say, I'm afraid, Joyce, of something, or like when I admit that, Joyce is so happy, because then she gets to mother me and hold me and nurture me. You want to add something else, Joyce?
I wanted you to share, like, what was it like in that moment, because that's what she asked you.
Oh,
in that moment when you were able to change.
Yeah. Oh, in that moment when I realized. Well, what led to that moment, as Joyce said, was our relationship actually was suffering. because I was just giving to Joyce and she was receiving, and we're unbalanced, as she said. So what I realized was, and I just woke up one morning and I realized, whoa, Barry, you're in pain too. You have a little boy too who's sad. You lost a child too. And when I had that realization, it was like a beautiful awakening for our relationship to bring back into balance.
I love that. And, we do need that symbiotic outcome, and we do need the reciprocity and the balance, because one can't always be giving. It's like I had a coach years ago who said to me, Donna, stop filling up buckets with holes and they never get full. And what I would do is just keep pouring my energy out and loving other people, and they would never have the opportunity actually to reciprocate. I didn't almost allow it. Or I was filling up a bucket that didn't need to be filled, or that one had a leaky hole in it, and didn't even want my help or took my help because they were imbalanced. And we see that a lot in relationships where one person is more willing than the other. Do you find that in your practice as well?
One person is more willing to give? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, more willing to give, more willing to love, more willing to have it be the best relationship it can be. You said yourself, sometimes one is more imbalanced. One person comes to the table with maybe a little bit more, let's call it broken. I don't like to use that word broken, but maybe their psyche is a little broken. And one person maybe is a little stronger. And so there seems to be one giving a lot more usually than the other.
Right. And yes, and that's often the case when a couple comes to see us. Even without saying it, one of them is the identified patient, the weak one, the broken one. And our job is to show every couple that it's 50-50, that there's a shared issues, that each one has pain, each one has love too. And when that comes out, it brings so much more peace to the couple.
I would believe that. I mean, without that, you're constantly in a deficit. So you're listening to WCWP.org. This is Donna Martini. We're at the In-Between, and I'm speaking to two authors, husband and wife team, been together over 50 years, Barry and Joyce Vissell. Their books are called To Really Love a Woman and To Really Love a Man. And there's something that I learned immediately going into your book, and that was one sentence. To really love another is to deeply love yourself. I was blown away by that and realized that if you can keep pouring your love out to somebody else, but if you have a deficit in yourself, how much love can there really be? Because love builds on love. Do you agree?
Yes, and one of our books was we titled it Light in the Mirror. And because all relationship is actually a mirror, when you're with a partner, you're looking into a mirror, and what you see is who you are. And that's such a blessing to realize that.
I wanted, yes, of course, what you said, I mean, that developing that relationship with yourself is so completely important. And a relationship can't really survive unless both people are focused on also loving themselves. And I wanted to share that early on in our relationship, Barry's a very wise person, and he sees things very differently than I do, and he can come up with just a whole new perception that helps me enormously. But that isn't always the case, and I would get, sometimes I would go to him and he just wouldn't be in that space. And it would make me so upset that I wanted him to be in that wise, amazing space every time. And what I learned from it, that if he was in that wise, amazing space every time, I would lose something within myself, because I would start going outward to him as opposed to really going inside to find the answers and really finding that wise, amazing self within me. So now I think I'm really actually quite strong with that. And there are times when I get stuck, and I'll ask him, and sometimes he can help me, and sometimes he can't. But I don't depend on him 100%. And I think that people sometimes relationships can get into trouble like that.
So what I'm hearing too, though, is if you're so in tune with each other and you're asking for the best relationship and you're asking for your best life and everything else, then you're really in tune with your soul. And there may be a time when Barry is not getting that because his soul is almost saying no to it. She has to do it for herself. You know, there's like a synergy going on and a back and forth that could be happening because you're so close, so connected, and so willing to help each other grow.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And now I go to Joyce because she has all the wisdom.
No, just kidding. But, you know, another thing that's happened over the years is I'm very intuitive, and I'll feel something really deep, and I'll feel that we're not supposed to do something, and it doesn't make any sense to Barry, and it's frustrating to him because he wants to do it, and that's something that has been a challenge for us over the years. But, you know, in the last, 20 years or so, I think you've learned that when I really feel something strongly, it's good to listen. And the same with you.
Yes.
When you feel something strongly, I've learned to really, really listen.
And the real art, Donna, is when we both feel something really strongly, then we need to stop and just be with it. Because, you know, to argue is not going to get it at all. But to really feel our way, you know, how can I listen to Joyce completely and also listen to myself completely? And believe it or not, it's possible.
Yes. I often find that when you're really feeling passionate about something and you really believe it as truth, it becomes combative when someone else has a different view. And I learned a long time ago, especially with someone I really care about, and we would agree on most things, and all of a sudden we wouldn't agree on something. And I realized there's a half truth in everything that someone says. So if I back down for a second and really listen and ask for that truth in their statement to come out, and then there's a truth in my statement, all of a sudden we make a new statement together, and it's really profound and beautiful, and it's not combative anymore. We realize you're right. Your point is right. My point is right. When we come together, it's even more profound.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful.
And you know, this kind of brings us to. I see we're only having 30 seconds more, but I was going to talk about sometimes arguing and anger is inevitable, and we do it too. After 53 years, Joyce and I can argue, but in the end, our goal is to be able to be vulnerable.
We're going to talk about that the second we get back, right after this break.
You're at The In-Between with Donna Martini.
We're back. It's Donna Martini at The In-Between. I'm with Barry and Joyce Vissell. They're authors. They're husband and wife team. They're coaches. They're amazing. One was in the medical profession. They're both in the medical profession, but they left a long time ago. They've been married for 50 years, and they teach about love. And what I love, too, about their practice is very specific sometimes about the power of vulnerability and the inner child work, which hardly anyone really does. So before we broke, we were talking about what I read in their book today that really helped me. To really love another is to deeply love yourself. And, you know, you hear that, it's very profound. It's got all kinds of different meanings to it that it can have. But what it meant to me was, if I really deeply loved myself, I would choose a partner who could really deeply love. Period. And in the past, I guess I didn't, because I actually attracted terrible types of love and relationships. Not that the people were bad or horrible, but they did bad things and did things to me as well. And I realized that I was the common denominator in 3 or 4 of these relationships through my life, and I must be the one who's attracting it. And it was my self-esteem. And so the idea of loving myself is what I've been doing for the last, I don't know how many years, really discovering what has taken me away from that inner love. And then obviously when I can love deeply, I can share what I have rather than coming with a deficit and looking for someone to actually be healthier than me, healthier than what I'm attracting from the past. So Barry, we talked about what would keep people from loving each other, and it's the emotional state. And you were mentioning anger before the break. So let's start with that.
Yeah, I just didn't want to give people the illusion that just because we're together 53 years, like we've got it together so much that we don't argue anymore, or we don't get angry at each other. We do, and it's a perfectly okay, it's normal, it's always painful. We love each other so much that when we get stuck and angry and defensive and blaming, it is agony. But what we have learned is the most important thing, and this is about loving ourselves. It's about what is my part? I can easily see what Joyce's part is. I'm angry at her. If she'd only change, right? And she does the same with me. If Barry only got it. But when we go inside and ask ourselves, how did I shut my heart? What's my responsibility? Then we come out with something vulnerable. It brings us together, and we're back in love.
That's awesome. And what another profound statement in your book that I read this morning that really blew me away, and I actually used it today when I was coaching someone. So I'm already robbing you of your quotes here, but I always give everybody credit. But it's relationships offer the real opportunity for our own spiritual growth. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so we started out our relationship with a big challenge. We're from the East Coast, and Barry was raised in a very traditional Jewish family. He was bar mitzvahed. I was raised in a very traditional Christian family, although they weren't real strict. It was kind of a very open Christian family. And we fell in love deeply before we realized that we were different religions. And Barry, this is a long time ago. It's 1964. Barry, it's not that far after the Holocaust and everything that happened, and he was raised that it's his responsibility to marry a Jewish person and to raise Jewish children. And this was very deeply embedded in him. And here I was, and I wasn't going to become Jewish. It wasn't in me, not even a tiny bit. And so our right away at age 18, our biggest challenge was this big religious difference. And nobody, not one person, thought that we could make it as a couple, because no one had, at that time, no one had ever heard of a Jewish and non-Jewish couple actually making it in a relationship. So that was our biggest challenge, and it actually caused us to break up several times. And then married, we realized we had to find a way to come together spiritually. Otherwise, we weren't going to make it as a couple. And we studied all the different religions and the meditation and yoga, and we did just about everything and had amazing, wonderful teachers. And what we've, came out of with all that is just this feeling that God is a presence of love, and that we need to draw this presence of love into our relationship every day through sitting together and through prayer and through just through a consciousness. And when there's challenges that come up, we try right away and go into prayer. So it's definitely the strongest part of our relationship, and it was without a doubt the weakest in the beginning. And when we do couples retreats or counsel people, we tell them this is the most important thing you can do, and it's not about being on a certain path or going to a certain church or a certain temple. It's about recognizing the higher power, this deep presence of God that comes as love, and to draw that into your relationship. And that's really who we are, and who the strength of our relationship is.
And so what if there's not God in the picture, especially if it's one side? I love what you said about attaching God to love, because basically if I have someone that I working with that doesn't have that higher knowing or higher power belief, I go back to the energy of love because it can be registered. It actually emits from our heart. It's now you can see it on machines now, and we understand it, and it can spread, and we can affect a room with it just by feeling it towards someone, just the way negativity is felt and anger is felt and can rile a room up. Love works much better, and it's a gazillion times stronger, more powerful to compensate for anything negative. But so you have to find the commonality first, right? Because sometimes it's really not God or even God. It would be something less tangible.
Right. We feel that every couple has a unique spiritual path and a way to get to that deepest place of love. And before I go on...
And they can be very different.
Yes, it can be very different.
Each person can be very different.
Yes. I do want to just, before I forget, we are going to be leading a couples retreat on the East Coast in the Berkshires, Western Massachusetts in the fall, the end of September. And if there's a couple listening who might be interested, go to our website, sharedheart.org, where you can read hundreds of articles that we've written.
That's awesome. I want to obviously get that in. We'll do it again at the end of the show. And what would a couple expect on these retreats? Is it for a couple that's in trouble necessarily, and maybe they're having issue, or should you go when you're actually doing well, just to go into a deeper level?
Wouldn't that be wonderful? We're starting a couples retreat here in California tomorrow night, and some of the couples are right on the edge of divorce. They're right there. Other couples are really happy but wanting to enrich their relationship, and some are young, some are old. It's wonderful to have that complete mix of all kinds of relationships.
We had a couple come, and so it's a weekend retreat, and both of them on Monday had appointments with divorce lawyers. So this was like, the last-ditch effort to see if there was anything they could do. Fortunately, it did turn around in a big way, and I think it was, if I can remember correctly, it was that inner child work, really recognizing that inner child in each one, that the other is not the enemy, but is really seeing that little child that needs to be loved and nurtured.
Yeah, it was actually the first time that they had done that work ever, even though they'd been in counseling for years.
You would think that religious entities, Catholicism or Judaism, you would think that they would teach about inner child work, because it is the spirit, soulful self. You can't teach that in school because you're not allowed to talk about that and God and everything else. But we are a injured child. We come through an entire childhood being bruised and injured by things that happen to us, even if we have great parents. And a lot of us didn't have great parents, but still, we come now to the table with a whole mess of stuff attached to us. And then we get married and we expect the other person to be healthier than we are and to, not trigger us or get us upset. And we don't really work together and come together when we have those problems. We're more like splitting apart. Even a couple who does well together most of the time can still spend so much time in their relationship self-protecting. It makes me crazy, and I'm talking about it and I coach it, but don't think that for a minute that I don't still do it. When I'm in a relationship, the first thing you want to do is self-protect, right? So talk about that. Now, we have a couples retreat, and we see loving couples, and then we have a couple who is really doing, badly and very scared for the outcome, or they wouldn't be seeing you. They obviously want to try to heal it, or they wouldn't be coming to a retreat. But will the other couple that gets along well, will that inspire them? Or will it be like, I could never do that. We could never be that way. We're not like that.
But you see, even the couple that's loving, we had a recent retreat where a couple was together for a few months, so they didn't have time they were in their honeymoon phase, and even then, it helped them so deeply to see the depth of pain that can be in relationship, and yet to see how, through vulnerability, through the inner child work, it can be helped, it can be healed, and there can be even more love. And so for the new couple or for the loving couple, it's incredibly inspiring.
I would think so. And it reminds me of another part of your book that I really enjoyed, and I'd love to study more. But so you share it with us today. Talk to us about the platinum rule.
I'm going to let Barry do.
Okay. Yes, I know. It's kind of cute, but it's really true. I mean, the golden rule is, of course, wonderful. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful way to live your life. However, it sometimes doesn't work in deep, intimate relationship, because then to follow the golden rule, for Joyce's birthday, I would get her a cordless drill, right? And she might not like that, right? But the truth, so we thought, okay, the platinum rule is much better, okay? Or call it whatever you want, the next level, okay? The diamond rule or whatever it is. It's do unto others as they would have you do unto them. So I don't get Joyce a cordless drill for her birthday. I get a beautiful card that with a poem on it, because with my own poem, because that's what she wants.
As opposed to, and so the listening audience knows, as opposed to the fact that you would want to get a drill for your birthday, so you're not necessarily giving it to her. And we do that with our love languages, right? You're saying, so one person might want you to come in towards them when they're feeling upset. Another person might want the person to go away and be alone when they're upset. Yes.
And another example is my love language is a lot about touch. And I love physical touch. Now, Joyce also loves touch just as much, but she also loves loving words. She loves me to speak the things that I love about her. So when I forget and I just go to the golden rule, I touch Joyce. And she likes touch, but she also needs the words, and that's the platinum rule. So to love Joyce is to speak loving words.
I wanted to share something that when I was a much younger woman, I was leading a women's retreat, and there was a woman who's probably my age right now, and she was happily married for 50 years. So I asked her, what is your secret? How did you stay so happily married for 50 years? And her answer was so simple, and yet in the same, it was also so wise. And I have followed her answer every day. And what she said was, I tell my husband every day that his lips really turn me on.
I'm just laughing here because I think that is just powerful and awesome. I'm going to let you finish the story, Joyce.
And I know. But of course, I don't use those same words because it would be, it wouldn't have the impact.
But she does love my lips.
Yeah, but I want Barry to, because he is. I want him to feel that he's, this totally sensual, sexual, amazing man that really, really turns me on so much every day. And there's something about that, especially because that's something that he really needs. It keeps a beautiful flow of energy, exciting flow of energy between us.
And I love to tell Joyce that her body is the body of a goddess, and it is.
And that helps me so much because, I'm not the same beautiful little shape I was when I was 18 or 22. I've had 3 children, and I just look different. But he still sees so much beauty and tells me and reaches for me, and that part of that sensual part of an appreciation it's really beautiful. It keeps an aliveness in a relationship. So it's not just two people are content and live together and have worked out all their financial stuff. It's two people who are excited to be together and to have a lot of fun.
Well, obviously, there is an energy of truth too. So if you're lying about it, you're going to probably do the opposite because your spouse won't believe you. So you guys also have to have something to say about each other that's real. I mean, you did keep the love there. I wonder though if starting from the very beginning and doing this, it brings yourself to a belief too. Rather than doing it 15 years later and you're not really attracted to your spouse for whatever reason because you're angry or resentful or whatever. And so now you're scrambling for something to say nice about them. I love the idea. I think it's awesome. But I wonder if you just make something up, it's not going to work. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm realizing we're almost out of time. But again, it comes back to if I'm loving myself, then I will love Joyce. And that's what it always comes back to. If you don't love yourself, you cannot love another.
And we're going to come back from a break with that very profound statement and elaborate on it more. We'll see you in 2 minutes.
You're at The In-Between with Donna Martini.
We're back at The In-Between. It's Donna Martini, WCWP.org, 88.1 FM on your radio dial from the beautiful campus of LIU. And I'm with Barry and Joyce Vissell. They're authors, they're coaches. They are amazing people, married 50 years, and do all kinds of seminars and workshops for loving people who want to be the best they can be in their relationships. And speaking of that, there wasn't always a time when they were the best, or at least one side was. And we're going to hear a story from Barry about when Joyce said no to him.
Oh, yeah. So I early in our relationship, we'd only been together 7 years, 3 years married, and I was pushing, as a lot of young people do, pushing the limits, pushing the boundaries, and okay, maybe we can include other people sexually. And Joyce never felt comfortable with that, but she tried it a little bit, and then she would say no, and finally her best friend, the matron of honor of our wedding, came to visit us, and Joyce saw the sexual energy between us, the sparks, and Joyce said to both of us, if we ever acted on that, if we ever had a physical sexual relationship, she couldn't handle it. The next day we did. We were alone and we had sex, and I told Joyce when I saw her what had happened, and that was the biggest no Joyce has ever said to me, and she left. She ended the relationship. She ended the marriage. She ended everything. And I didn't know that she would do that. See, I thought she would love me through it and we would find a way. But thinking back now, that her saying no and ending the relationship the way she did, it was the biggest no she's ever said, and it was the biggest gift she's ever given to me. What it taught me, and this was the big thing that I needed to learn, it's about the inner child. That was the first time when Joyce left that I realized I had a little boy inside me that was not only needing her love, but needing love, period. That was I wouldn't even go there to that feeling of needing love. And it was because of that I was free now to feel my need for Joyce, that she was able to actually come back. And it changed our whole lives, because Joyce has always been comfortable with needing my love, but now I'm comfortable needing hers. And that's a beautiful thing. It's two children.
Is that what made, I'm wondering as a coach, I can't stop being a coach right now, what made you cheat knowing it would hurt her so much? Did you want to test that?
I was pretty shut down back then. And it's not that I wanted to hurt Joyce. I wanted to prove to myself that I didn't need her. And that's why I had the affair. So that's the nutshell of it.
And then in that you found that you really, really, really did need her, which is sometimes what I find with couples when there is infidelity, it actually makes them stronger afterwards. Not that I'm condoning anyone go out there and do it for that purpose, but we often see it. People finally come back together stronger than ever when they decide to forgive, obviously, and they realize what they're going to lose.
Right. And that, you don't, we always tell people, like, if you want to go through the worst thing, then have an affair, because it's such a huge fire to walk through, and many couples don't make it. And it took, I'd like to say, it just took a week and we were fine, but it wasn't. It probably took a good 2 years for me to trust Barry again, to really, really trust him. And that's part of the healing process, is that the one that has the affair, you have to be so steady and become so trustworthy within yourself that you know without a doubt that you're not going to do this again. And if you don't know that, then you can't communicate it to your partner, and the relationship probably won't survive.
And just to that point, because I read in your book about the trust issue, and I know for myself, I have denied my gut instinct so many times that I actually don't trust myself more than I don't trust other people. So I realize, too, what you're saying is you have to really believe the other person won't ever do it. You'll feel that as an instinct, too. So it helps when the other person is real about it, right?
Yes, exactly. And it did bring us closer, because we had to recreate our relationship, and we had a lot of bad habits because we met when we were 18. We had like childlike habits, actually, tantrums, and we had to recreate our relationship so that it on a really firm foundation. And then so a lot of people say, well, aren't you still angry with him, or aren't you still hurt when he talks about the affair? But actually, I'm not, because, of course, it was horrible. It's the most pain I've ever experienced in my life, even more than losing the baby, and that was terrible. That it was like all of a sudden just losing that trust in Barry. It allowed us to have this beautiful relationship that we have now. And to really realize that it's so important to always be in integrity with each other and honest.
Yeah. And can I say one more thing? And it's beautiful. I trust myself, and that's why Joyce can trust me. Joyce trusts herself, and that's why I can trust Joyce. It goes that way.
Yes, I was saying that before. When it's real, it's easy to feel it, because when when you're living a lie, you're in a weakness. You can sense the other person isn't being true to you and authentic, and that creates an imbalance. You want to believe them, and maybe you even will stay with them because you want to keep going with the relationship. But underneath that, there is always a tension, always a fear, because it's not a genuine expression of truth. But I think that goes back to the vulnerability as well. For me, learning vulnerability, and I wonder if our listening audience is similar, you have to allow for the relationship to go where it's going to go. You have to allow for the other person to make mistakes. I remember that I was hurt so often in my relationship that I almost was trying to control the destiny because I can control my future pain. Do you find that as well in some of your clients?
Yes, and that's, of course, the biggest myth, is that we can control anything. We have to learn that we're not in control.
I especially like to help my clients by saying, keep asking for truth. If you feel that there is a mistrust going on, that you really can't trust your partner, pray for truth. Ask for truth. Be willing to see truth. And you're not asking the other person, because most likely they're not going to tell you. But you're asking higher knowing, higher power. And you will, in profound ways, the truth will come out. And to be vulnerable to that in my life in the last few years was to allow everything to unfold and be willing to see that truth means that I might have to leave that person because they're not trustworthy, or they're just not being good to me, or they're not faithful, or whatever. But it's okay, because that's the best outcome for me, is to leave, not to stay and hope they don't do anything wrong.
Exactly.
Right.
And you know what? We probably one of the most important things we need to convey to people in our sessions is to trust your own feelings. Because most of us grow up not learning that we can't trust our feelings, that our feelings are not to be listened to. And yet that's so vitally important. Listen to what you feel. Feel it. Doesn't mean you have to do anything about it, but you have to learn to identify what you're feeling.
And, in talking, because we've gone through this affair, it's kind of a subspecialty in our practice. We see a lot of people that have had affairs. And typically, I would say almost 100%, the other partner, and it can be a man or a woman, they know the very day that there's been this betrayal, even though there's no word spoken and the other partner, tries to make everything be the same. But there is this inner knowing, and if Barry, the thing that saved us is that Barry was honest with me within a few hours, actually, and that really helped me. It's the couples that go on for sometimes years. They're having this affair, this secret affair, and then it'll like what you said, the truth comes out in some way, through someone else, or someone sees, all the different ways that the truth can come out. Those couples, that's really challenging. It's really hard to find a deep trust again.
Yeah, so Joyce, I get that, and I remember distinctly being in relationships and knowing the second that the man lied to me, and he would be insisting. I'd be calling him on it, not in a bad way, but just, insistent because I feel it so strongly. And he would insist the other way. He would convince me or try to convince me. And I can remember giving in to him and not honoring my own gut. And that caused me great distress in my body. I actually led me to disease, a gut disease, which was Crohn's. And I really believe that constant dishonoring of my own truth and my own, soul message and everything else just created so much tension and imbalance in my life that it just started taking over my body. And my body was like screaming at me, listen. And I really wasn't. I was honoring him more than I was honoring myself. I can tell our listening audience that the most important thing you can do for yourself is to ask for truth and then listen and then honor those feelings. Write them down. Go to someone that can help you ascertain and see through it. Don't deny. And sometimes, once in a while we can be paranoid, but for the most part, we're paranoid for a good reason. Don't you guys agree?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, you described all that perfectly, Donna.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, really, really, really good.
Well, so I'm going to ask you guys a question now because I'm just very, very, very curious. I wanted to ask you in the first segment, and we got carried away on another conversation. But you're one Christian, one Jew, okay, in a household, and I know how much issue that created. I want to know, did you also have different political views? Because that would have been very hard.
Oh my gosh, I mean, right now, with what's going on, I don't think we could. I don't know what we would do. I mean, we're so aligned, and we need, because it's so upsetting. We need to talk about it,
right?
And
I think Donna, the religious thing was so big that there was no room for any other difference at the time.
I can imagine the political views now. Families are ripping apart. I mean, it's really crazy the way it's going. And that's why I created the show, to be honest. The In-Between is about being able to talk about our issues, coming to the middle without malice, without blame, ridicule, name-calling, and really see what we can agree on, because there's lots of truth in the middle. And there's truth on each side of the political aisle that we all need to see and be more tolerant about. No one has it all right. Okay, and no one has it all wrong either, but we just refuse to see that. And to come to the middle is where we can actually resolve issue. And every single one of our political issues is causing a huge wellness issue for us. So we're never getting anything done, and we're all getting sicker. It's the same with the relationship. I'm going to ask you, Barry and Joyce, flat out. I mean, you see couples who are ripping apart. You probably see how their children are being affected by it, and their health is being affected by it.
Right. And again, if we get those couples to really be vulnerable with each other, chances are they're going to hear each other. And when you can really hear the vulnerability in your partner, it doesn't matter if it's political difference, religious difference, sexual difference, whatever it is, if you can hear the vulnerability, if you can hear that little child speak, it brings you together.
It's also easier to do that as the person who's speaking their truth, to say it as if it were really your feeling and not what you think. Because thinking, gets skewed. But if you really feel right now, your heart's breaking for those children that were separated from their parents, rather than, quoting law or whatever, or being angry at the other side for doing it. If you would just talk about that pain that's attached, the other person can relate to that, and then you can open up discussion. And I'm just throwing that out there as one example. But we digress a little bit. We're about love, not about politics today, and I'm happy about that because we've been talking about a lot of politics recently in social media and everything else. We only have a couple minutes left, guys, and I really want you to tell the story about how you said, "I will always choose you."
Oh, thank you, Donna. So our daughter, our oldest daughter, was getting married in our backyard, and her friend was setting up the sound system. He's a professional, and he asked me to come out and just say something into the microphone so he could test the sound quality. So there I was with the microphone on the day that our daughter was getting married, and I knew that somewhere, we have 16 acres of land where we live, and I knew that somewhere in our land, Barry was somewhere clearing poison oak from an area where he thought some of the children might play, and that's a really long distance. So I took the microphone and I said, "Barry, wherever you are, I choose you all over again. You're the most wonderful, wonderful husband." So that was broadcast all over our 16 acres and pretty much everybody else on our road. And then this shout came from down below where he's clearing poison oak, covered in the dirtiest, ugliest clothes. And he shouts, "Joyce, I choose you all over again." And that was really sweet. It was a wedding. But the thing is that was a special time. But it's important to do that often in a relationship, just to randomly look at your partner and say, I choose you all over again. If I had my whole life to live over again, I choose you, and I'm so grateful that I'm with you. And we have sometimes people do this in the couple sessions, and one of them oftentimes will burst into tears because they have this feeling that the other person is with them just because they're stuck, because they have children, that maybe they own a home together, maybe they're in business together, but they feel that their partner is just stuck and has to be with them.
Right.
And so that
I thought you were going to say that they were crying because they realize they don't want to be with the person anymore, but that's a whole other situation. But we have 19 seconds left, guys. You have to say where to get in touch with you and where you are. You have 15 seconds. Go.
Okay. sharedheart.org. SHAR